Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh bidvaroi. Amen. Okay, good morning everybody. Good Erev Shabbos. As we jump back into Likutei Moharan, beginning a new Torah today, the second actually of the Torahs regarding clapping during davening that we said really is all one inyan. Torah Mem Hei. Today's shir is sponsored by Yitzchak Gedalyah ben Ilanit for the zechus of Menashe, Gavriel ben Chava, and Avraham Shlomo ben Ilanit, and by Zev Klein, the nishmas, his parents of barindel Simcha and Ya'akov and Yisha'Ihu, also dedicated as a zechus for refuah sheleimah for Chaim Yehoshua ben Chaim Miriam and Galus ben Malka, and dedicated to nishmas Chaim Avraham ben Yehuda Leib. We shall only hear Basuras Tevas Be'ezras Hashem all around. Okay, so we take a look at Torah Mem Hei with Hashem's help, which is also Lashon Rabbeinu Zechron Levrcha. And Reb Nosson again is going to tell us, or told us really, after Mem Dalid, but it should be after Mem Vav, that these three lessons really, he'd heard them all at the same time, Shabbos, Parshas Nitzavim, and it was all different inyanim, understanding and explaining the value and the importance of clapping our hands during davening. Says the Rebbe, Mechayis kapayim betfila, clapping our hands during davening. Through this, we activate and awaken the aspect of wings. Shemisham v'hadibor, clapping gives you wings. And speech comes from wings. The pasuk says in Kehalas, Ubal knafayim yagid davar. Right, this is where the colloquial expression, a little birdie told me, right? It comes from this pasuk. Bal knafayim yagid davar. A winged creature will take dibor, right? Which is why you find even in Chazal, they were careful to say something, right? Because you never know who might be listening. And they would quote this pasuk, Bal knafayim yagid davar. If you say something in one place, before you know it, as we found out when we started telling people we were moving to Eretz Yisrael, wink, wink, all of a sudden it spreads, right? Before you necessarily mean it to. But Bal knafayim yagid davar, that's just the teva hadvarim. Uksiv v'yidei adam mitachas kanfeim. And it says that literally it means that the angels had human hands underneath their wings, but you can also read this to say v'yidei adam mitachas kanfeim. Human beings have hands mitachas kanfeim in the place of, right, as a substitute for wings. And so hands are associated with wings. Wings are associated with dibor. And by clapping our hands, this awakens our wings, so to speak, and enables us to speak properly. Nimsa, it emerges when a person activates their yadayim, azai aknafayim nisayrim. This wakes up the knafayim. Now, in our physiology, in the Hebrew language, we actually have knafayim. Right? What are the knafayim within us? These are the kanfei reya. Right? These are the rib cage. Right? The place of our lungs. Shemishamnis hava adibor, where in order to be able to project a voice, we need to breathe in and expand our lungs, right, and make sure that our lungs have space to expand and that they're functioning properly. Shemishamnis hava adibor, because that's where dibor is going to come from. However, although we were able to draw breath, which is the aspect of the knafayim, which is kanfei reya, we still need to prepare our mouth to be able to speak the words of tefillah. Clapping does both. Clapping gives us the air, the wind that we need to be able to breathe in, expand our kanfei reya, let our lungs take in the air that's necessary to produce the voice. But we still need the peh, we still need the functionality of the mouth. Says Rabbi Nachman, clapping will take care of that too. Ki b'chol yad chamisha etzba'os. Every hand, hopefully, has 5 fingers. We saw something similar actually in Torah Vav. When the oiros, when the spiritual energies encounter one another, that's called a hakah, right? When they bump into one another, yad yamin biyad small, the right hand meeting the left hand, this produces the mathematical equation of hainu chamisha pa'amim chamisha. This makes 5 times 5. Because each of the 5 fingers is encountering each, right, of the 5 fingers on the other hand, even though each one is only bumping into one of them, right? So you would think it's 5 plus 5, but in a certain sense, and as much as the hand contains all 5, and each of the 5 fingers is encountering that hand, it's encountering all 5, right? And so that's 5 times 5 from the standpoint of the right hand encountering the left hand, and that gives you that gives you 25. And on the other side, the left hand is encountering the right hand. That's also 5 times 5. That also gives you 25. Hey, that gives you 2 times 25, which is gematria 50. Okay. So what am I gaining from this? That I'm activating in my human physiology 50. What does that do? Says the Rebbe, this is the aspect of the 50 times that Yitzias Mitzrayim is mentioned in the Torah HaKadoshah, as the Mekubalim tell us. There are 50 askaras, 50 times in the Torah that Yitzias Mitzrayim is mentioned. Why? Because Yitzias Mitzrayim was accomplished on account of what? On account of the revelation of the Ar of Bina. Why Bina? Because Mitzrayim, as we're going to see in a minute, Mitzrayim, say Chazal, Kol Galus and Geulas Mitzrayim, all the exiles are called Mitzrayim. Why? Al Shem Shehem Mitzrayim LeYisrael. Right? Because Mitzrayim is an aspect of Mitzrayim. It means constriction, limitation. It means that we're trapped and stuck within an experience of limitation, right? And that's the aspect of the lower 7 midas, which is the bechina of Galus, right? It's a bechina of being disconnected from shirish, not able to channel the fullness of the allness of reality, being stuck down in the pratim, being stuck in the anafim, right? As opposed to being connected to the trunk, the unified makar of everything. Bina is the realm of freedom. If the lower 7 midas is olam hazeh, Bina is the energy of olam haba. Bina is the energy of yovel, right? The aspect of yovel. Yovel is freedom. V'karasim drar la'aretz, right? Drar is associated with the 50th year, which is the bechina of yovel, and everybody knows that yovel is connected to Bina. Why? Because what are in Bina? Chamishim sha'arim, right? The chamishim shari Bina, and that's the aspect of this that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Ya'akov Avinu, Hine anochi alcha yered imcha Mitzrayim. I am going down with you into Mitzrayim, va'anochi alcha gam alay, and I will also lift you out. And the B'ditchever Rav tells us that the wording is precise. Doesn't say ani ered imcha Mitzrayim. It says anochi. What's anochi? Says the B'ditchever, the Torah HaKadoshah. Anochi Havaya lekecha. That is what will maintain Klal Yisrael even in Mitzrayim b'chashai, in a secret, quiet way, in a hidden way, and that is what's going to bring Am Yisrael out, right? Tavdan Elokim alahar hazeh. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu had told Moshe. You're going to take Klal Yisrael out for what purpose? They're going to end up standing at the foot of Har Sinai. How many days did they count when they left Mitzrayim? 50. They arrive at Har Sinai. That's the bechina of Bina. That's the bechina of Yovel. Torah comes down from Shemayim. Say Chazal, and we've mentioned this before. Al tikre charus ala luchas. Don't read that the 10 Commandments were etched onto the luchas. Ella cherus ala luchas. Right? Ein ben chayrin elami she laimit Torah. Right? Person who's engaged with Torah. That's a ben chayrin. And so all of this is Bina energy. Getting out of Mitzrayim, Bina energy. Says the Rebbe, that's why Yitzias Mitzrayim is mentioned 50 times in the Torah. It's the energy of freedom, connecting me to a realm that's beyond the world of limitation, taking me out of the anafim, so to speak, of the 7 lower branches that emerge from this upside-down tree that begins in a makar, and then is mishtalshal, and then spreads out, right? So we're stuck in the branches. And our goal in being yotzeh from Mitzrayim is to access the source, which is a place of freedom. L'mala min hateva. Says the Rebbe, Ki al yedei bechinas yovel yatsu migalus Mitzrayim. It was through the aspect of yovel that Am Yisrael were able to be redeemed from Mitzrayim. Okay, so that's the redemption from Mitzrayim. But think a bit deeper, what was the nature of the Galus Mitzrayim? Says the Rebbe, we know from the Sfarim HaKadoshim, the Ve'ikr Galus Mitzrayim, Shaya HaDibur Begalus. The primary aspect of Galus Mitzrayim was that Dibur was in Galus. What's Dibur? Dibur is Malchus, right? The Shechina, which is Knesset Yisrael, was in Galus. And that translates Kabbalistically because Klal Yisrael are associated with Knesset Yisrael. Knesset Yisrael, the collective soul of the Jewish nation, is associated with the sphere of Malchus. Malchus Peh, right? Malchus is associated with Dibor. So that means that in a certain sense, speech was exiled. With all of the bechinos of what that means. One bechina of speech being exiled means, this is something we've learned earlier in Torah Vav, for example, B'svasav kibduni v'libam richak mimeni. It means there was a disassociation, a disconnect between one's words and who one is, right? That means that things became extremely technical, practical, without being able to communicate the fullness and the totality of the one who was speaking the words, right? That's B'svasav kibduni. Dibur was functioning, but v'libam richak mimeni. It was no longer channeling that higher world of the lave. What's the lave associated with? Bina. Bina liba, uba lev maven. And so that's one understanding of the way in which Dibur was disassociated from Malchus. There was an exile of Dibur. That's what exile means, when people are estranged from their Makar, from their Sherish. Dibur was in exile. Dibur went into Galus. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu was a kvad peh, because when he's in Mitzrayim, he's stuttering, he's not able to speak. Val yedei geula nishava b'chinas peh. Yitzias Mitzrayim was mamtik, the aspect of Dibur. And that's why Dibur is so associated with Pesach. Of course, Pesach itself, the Svar Makdashim tell us, should be read as Pesach, a mouth that speaks. Kol amarbel is saper b'yitzias Mitzrayim reisa meshubach. Everything has to do on Pesach with speaking. We've said the remez of the Dagamach Ephraim of Ulechol b'nei Yisrael lo yechratz kelev l'shoinam, right? And kelev is kilev l'shoinam, right? Where now that lashon, which was Dibur, was now reconnected to its makar, to its shirish, because Yitzias Mitzrayim meant that the R of Bina was shining. Memelo, the R of Bina is shining. We're able to return to who we are, right? And where we are born and reborn again. That's what it means. That's Bina. That's tshuva. Tshuva is that same realm. It means I'm reconnecting to my authentic self instead of living a fraudulent life that's disassociated from really who I am, my makar, and feeling deep inside this existential angst of knowing that I'm spending my days wasting, essentially, my fundamental life force that was sent to this world to do something, and instead of doing that thing, I'm doing something else, right? Tshuva means I have to return to my natural state. That's called geula. That's called cheres. That's called freedom. To return to that endless makar where I feel satiated and satisfied, knowing that what I'm doing is what I was sent to this world to do. That's Yitzias Mitzrayim. Val yedei geula nishava b'chinas peh. On account of the redemption, it emerged that we are able to talk again in a real way. Nimsa, it emerges, shal yedei chamishim shari bina nishava peh. Malchus is activated, peh is activated as a revelation of the chamishim shari bina, as a revelation of the aspect of 50. V'zeh b'chinas, this is incredible, when Moshe Rabbeinu complains to Hashem and says, "Lama zel shalchtani, why are you sending me? I'm just aral sfasayim ve'echish. How is anybody gonna listen? Klal Yisrael won't listen to me. Pyre won't listen to me." What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell Moshe Rabbeinu? Nisam pela adam. Who is it that gives that gives the ability to speak to the human being? Says the Rebbe, look more carefully. The word me is gematria 50. So instead of reading it, me sam pel adam, who is it that gives a mouth to a person? You can read, it's a statement, not a question. Me sam pel adam. Hashem says that's the whole point. You're aral sfasayim because you have to experience the galus. You're going to stand in front of a thorn bush. You're going to feel the prickly, difficult, challenging nature of what exile is. You have to be rooted in that, Moshe Rabbeinu. Of course you're aral sfasayim, because that's representative of what this whole galus is that you came to fix. But Moshe Rabbeinu, I'm about to bring an energy of Bina down into the world. I'm about to reconnect Klal Yisrael to their Makar, so that even though on the outside, halalu avdei avodah zarah, halalu avdei avodah zarah, on the banks of the Yamsuf, there's going to be a birur process, and Klal Yisrael are going to survive, and the Egyptians will not. Goy mikarev goy. Hashem is going to take one nation out of another nation and be mevar them at their shirish, that be'emes, b'nei Avraham, Yitzchak, and Ya'akov, Kadosh v'tahar, Zera Yisrael. So Memela Moshe Rabbeinu, yeah, right now you don't have Dibur, but me, chamishim shari bina, sam pela adam. that is what's going to rectify this Galus Hadibor, the Galus Mitzrayim. It is the me that's giving a person a peh. Mi daika, right? Specifically the word mi, which is 40, and the yud is 10, which together is 50. That when a person claps their hands, but again, a person has to know this, otherwise it doesn't work. If a person is mindlessly clapping, they're not conscious of what they're doing. The whole point is that what we do physically is supposed to give us the ability in our own mind and consciousness to be able to contemplate, right, what's being activated. So a person has to know this, and a person has to remember this. Then when a person's davening, in the middle of davening, a person's clapping, and in that moment they remember Torah Mem Hei because they've reviewed it, and they've onboarded it, all of a sudden they feel within themselves, Gavriel, I can speak. You know why I can speak? Because right now my hands are bringing about the energy of 50, because 25, right, of the right hand hitting the left hand 5 times 5, 25 because the left hand hitting the right hand 5 times 5. And all of a sudden, this is activating the energy of Bina. This is activating the energy of Chamishim. And that's mi sampeh. All of a sudden, Gewalt, Tefillah, I realize this is the essence of who I am. It isn't sometimes we feel estranged from ourselves when we stand in prayer. Maybe it feels inauthentic. On the contrary, mi sampeh la'adam. That's just because there's an external shell that's preventing me from accessing who I really am. But when I'm able to clap my hands, that activates me. Nimsa, says the Rebbe, shal yidei mechas kaf, when a person claps their hands, chamisha etzba'is yamin, b'chamisha shebiyad smal, the 5 fingers of the right hand encountering the 5 fingers on the left hand, v'chamisha b'yad smal, b'chamisha shebiyad yamin, and the 5 fingers of the left hand encountering the 5 fingers of the right hand. Neshaba b'chinas me. This brings out the aspect of me. That's why I think if one will clap during davening, which apparently is highly encouraged, again, this shouldn't just be academic. We should mamish bring it into practice. Mamish. I was a little surprised I wasn't hearing any clapping the past couple of days. You're supposed to do it, not just to learn it. Yeah, we have to clap. That's what the Rebbe says, right? So I bet the person next to me is gonna. It does not matter. They're totally ignorant. And Hashem should be Meir Einehem also. The Rebbe says to clap. I don't care what anybody thinks of me, right? Just clarifying. So the point is, I don't think that it's supposed to be clapping like this. All right, according to what we're saying, it's a very precise encounter between the that's why I keep doing this. The fingers on the right hand and the fingers on the left hand, fingers on the left hand and the fingers on the right hand. Right?
That's not good.
No.
Huh? That's not. That's.
I don't think so. Right? Yeah. This would not be. It's clapping like this. This is the way, right? That it's activating this aspect of chamishim. L'chayra. Nimsa shayim chas kaf chamisha etzba'is yamin b'chamisha b'yad smal b'chamisha b'yad smal and b'chamisha b'yad yamin. You'll practice later during Shemona Esrei. This hava b'chinas mi, right? This will bring about the aspect of me, binash al yada. This hava peh, and that's going to give us a mouth kamashakasa, like we said, mi sam peh la adam. And already we said earlier the prior part of speech, which is breathing, right, is accomplished because I woke up my wings, which is the B'chin of Kanfei. So clapping, mamish, gives me dibur. It gives me the breath, and then it enables me to check, which we said, right? That's associated with the wings, which are going to carry the dibur. And we already said earlier on that the wings are going to be activated through my dibur. And this is what we see, right? That the fingers look like ribs, right? They have this aspect of the curling over, right? Separated, right? Rib, bones. Each of those things called something else. Ribs, right? And that's what the fingers are. And that's why the poskim say, Nishbar agaf samach laguf. It says about a bird that if you have a mum where nishbar agaf, the wing, right, was broken, samach laguf, so then treifa. Then for sure it's a treifa. Why? Because the wings are attached to the ribs, right? And then if the wing is going to be broken, so then it's not going to be able to survive, right? It's a mum where it's a treifa, right? It means that we assume that the rib has been penetrated also. So the Rebbe is trying to bring from here the correlation between knafayim, which is yidei adam mitachas kanfeim, our hands, and the kanfei rea, right? Those two things are associated. So somehow, again, whether this is scientifically accurate, but at least metaphysically, clapping our hands gives us the ability to speak. It activates our breath. Clapping activates breathing, and the quality of our breath is going to impact the quality of our speech. And the clapping also is going to connect to the bechina of the Chamishim Shari Bina, which will then give us the ability to articulate from an authentic place, connecting Bina and Malchus, Malchus and Bina, and giving us the experience of freedom to be able to go ahead and articulate what it is that we feel we need to articulate. And that, my friends, is Torah Mem Hei. Okay, let's continue with Torah Mem Vav. Let's try our best. Let's try our best to finish Mem Vav today and start a new topic next week. B'siyata d'shmaya. This one is a little bit technical, a little bit more technical, but let's take a stab at it. Lashon Rabbeinu Zechron Levraka. Okay, same inyan. Again, Reb Nosson says all of these were taught that same Shabbos. These are the first teachings that Reb Nosson ever heard from the Rebbe. Lashon Rabbeinu Zechron Levraka. These are the words of Rabbi Nachman. Mechas kaf b'shas hatfila, the aspect of clapping during davening. Zebechinas nesinas hamita min safon l'darim. This is the aspect of that which is brought that a person ought to put their bed between Safan and Darim, between north and south, which is interesting because we find the Chazal the opposite, that a person is supposed to put their bed between east and west, right? And there's a lot of discussion about that because the Ariyah Kodesh brings that down, that a person should be east and west. And you find also there's a source that says north and south. But over here, the Rebbe rectifies it because he says, yes, you're putting your bed between east and west, but the way you sleep on that bed is north and south. North and south are to your side, right? If the bed is to east and west, so then the two sides is north and south. And that's what the Rebbe means, as you're going to see in a minute. So of course the Rebbe is saying that we're putting it between east and west, like is brought in the Sifrei Kabbalah. But north and south what he means to say is that your two sides are going to be activated by the directions of Safan and Darim. Ki mita, says the Rebbe, what is the inyan of mita and bechina zivug? Mita is the aspect of zivug, right, which we've learned earlier, I believe in Torah Yud Aleph, bechinas tefillah, and that's the aspect of prayer. The Safan and Darim is bechinas yadayim. And over here, if you're putting your bed between east and west, so then your two sides is the aspect of Safan and Darim. And that's mita. That the zivug is created between Safan and Darim, the right and the left hands. I think this was the source that we learned in Torah Yud Aleph. He wanted his tefillah to be samach limitasai, which literally means he wanted to daven right after he got up and not to do anything else before he davened. Samach limitasai. But says the Rebbe, Hainu shelo yehefresh bein hatefillah lezivug. He wanted that his tefillah should bring about zivugim, which we're going to learn about now, on account of his bed being between east and west. And mainly his hands are between north and south. And north and south, as we're going to see, is the aspect of zivug, which is going to have to do with clapping. How so? Says the Rebbe, also on account of clapping, the judgments are sweetened. And here he's going to explain the tikkun. We've alluded to this previously, but here the Rebbe spells it out in the most fullest exposition. Says the tzaddik. Okay, a little bit technical. Let's try to hold on. Ki yesh shalish havayas. There are three aspects of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Three aspects of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Shehi mechina shalosh yadayim. That are associated with the three yadayim. What do you mean three yadayim? We only have two. Because with regard to Yetzias Mitzrayim, which we just spoke so much about, we find that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought about the Hisavas HaPeh, Geulas HaPeh, Misam Pela Adam, using three yadayim. Yad HaGedalyah, Yad HaChazaka, and Yad HaRama. These three hands, which are associated, of course, with the three primary midas. Yad HaGedalyah is Chesed, Yad HaChazaka is Gevura, Yad HaRama is Tiferes, bringing together the Yad HaYamin and the Yad HaSmal. The Yad Yamin is the Yad HaGedalyah, right? The right hand is the aspect of Yad HaGedalyah. The Yad HaSmal is the Yad HaChazaka. The left hand is the Yad HaChazaka, the strong hand. Ubishas haka, and when a person brings his hands together, sheneschabrim yachad, zebechinas Yad Rama. This brings about a third energy, which is called Yad Rama, which is the aspect of Tiferes. Why is it called Rama? Because Tiferes is nothing other than the external manifestation of the energy of Keser, right? Yad Gedalyah and Yad Chazaka, which Chesed and Gvura, are respectively rooted in a lower place than Tiferes. You understand? Because Tiferes is lower than them, but Tiferes is channeling an energy that begins higher up than Chachma and Bina, which is the first instantiation of right and left. Right? And left? Yeah? Guys, right? So Keser reaches up, and it really is just what's manifesting in the entire Chava and Tzai. Chava and Tzai is not particularized energies. Not really. Kav Yamin and Katzal are not really either particularized energies, because, right, Chachan is Chachma Chesed and Netzach, and Baga is Bina, Gvur, and Haid. And those are the right and the left Kavin, respectively. But Tiferes is itself, like the Mekubalim explain, what rises beside Das. Right? It's not a different energy. It's Tiferes that rises up. It's Tiferes that comes down into Yisod, Yaakov, and Yosef, Kechada Hashivi. Right? It's all one thing. And then finally, the whole package is manifest as Malchus. Right? So Yad Ramah means that it's this middle energy that's able to connect me to that highest point. Diburim that leave a person, leave the body through the garin, right? Through the throat. That is where the breath that we just mentioned in the previous lesson is drawn down into it and then channeled through the garin and then coming out through the peh. Garin is the aspect of din, right? Garin is din because it is the most narrow part of the human physiology, right? Right? They say, like, if a person's stuck in traffic, it's a bottleneck, right? Bottleneck, right? That's the way that we refer to tzimtzum. Means it's mitzumtzam. There's nowhere to move. It's a bottleneck, right? It means everything's trying to get out through a narrow point, and that's the Indian of tzimtzum. Says the Rebbe, Garain is gematria shalish ba'amim elikim. If you take 86 and you times it by 3, you are left with 259, right? It is 258, but again, one with the Karlo, it's 259. So 3 times elikim is Garain. Veheim nimtakim al yidei shalosh havayas. So, oh my gosh, my words, they're getting stuck. I'm not able to... Because it's tzimtzum, Meitzar Hagarin it's called. Mitzrayim is Meitzar Hagarin. It's the constricted point of the neck. Parai, we know, is the same letters as Ha'oirif, which is the back of the neck. Again, a reference to the din of this particular point. How am I going to be able to let my words emerge? Says the Rebbe, by sweetening the 3 times Elikim with the 3 times Yudke Vavke. What was the 3 times Yudke Vavke? Yad Yamin, Yad Smal, bringing them together as Yad Ramah. That sweetens 3 times Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's going to sweeten the 3 times Elokim that are Gematria Garein. V'zeh perish nafshi b'chapi tamid. David HaMelech said, my soul is always lifted toward you, Hashem, b'chapi, but it's in my hands. Nefesh, what's nefesh? Zebechinas dibor. Nefesh is speech. Kameshikasav nafshi yotze b'dabrei. Right? My words emerged. And my soul rather emerged bidabre when he spoke, right? So speech is associated with nefesh. Says David HaMelech, nafshi, which is diburi, is bekapi tamid. You know what it depends on? It depends on kapayim. It depends on my hands. It depends on yad Gedalyah, yad hachazaka, yad ramah, 3 times yud kevavke to sweeten the 3 times elikim, which equal garet. Hayna mechinas tvila kameshikasav tayrif nafshi ba'apai. A soul that's torn by his words. Bechapi, haina bechinas mechas hakaf. Kapayim, like we said, is clapping. Okay, so then when I have this tikkun, I have the 3 times Elokim, which is Gematria 258, which equals Garein, which is 259, one with the Kailel, and then I add to that 3 times Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is Gematria 3 times 26 is 78, and I put them all together. What does that give me, Edgar? How was that? 258 and 78 is 336. Shin Lamed Vav. Says the pasuk, Nafshi bechapi tamid. This stuff is, you could understand why Reb Nosson just became a chassid on the spot. Like, this is not normal. This is not normal Torah. This is giluyim on the level of, like, no one's heard such a thing. This is Torah's emes. Nafshi bechapi tamid. Nefesh is dibur. Bechapi tamid means depends on my hands. I'm bringing about a tikkun hagarein on account of my hands. In other words, the 3 times Yud Kei Vav Kei, 78, are sweetening the 3 times Elikim, 258. What are the next 3 words in that pasuk in Tehillim? Al yedei zeh v'sayrascha lai shachachti. your Torah I have not forgotten. Rosh Tevis, Shin Lamed Vav. Shin Lamed Vav is the 336 that is the equation of 78, 3 times Havaya, and 258, 3 times Elokim. Nafshi b'chapi tamed. When I'm in tefillah, I'm sweetening my dibor by clapping and bringing about the 3 times Yud Kevavke 78 to sweeten the 258 of the Garein. So then the next 3 words are going to have the Rosh Tevis that is Gematria Shin Lamed Vav, which is bringing together 3 times Havaya and 3 times Elokim. Gematria Shalosh Havayas v'Shalosh Elokim Hainu Am Takas Hadinim, the ultimate sweetening of the din, and that's a pasuk in Tehillim. Unbelievable. Soides. Gam ikra shikchu mimoichin dekatnas. So why is it a reference? I mean, look at the words themselves. V'sayrascha lo shachachni, and I have not forgotten your Torah. Says the Rebbe, yeah, because shikcha is an aspect of moichin dekatnas b'bechinas halikim. Shikcha has to do with din. Where did shikcha come into the world? Remember something we spoke about very early on in the series. Chazal say that shikcha came into the world when Moshe Rabbeinu broke the luchos. The breaking of the luchos was the undoing of the energy of bina. The energy of bina is gavalt. It's a unified energy of the aseres hadibros that are koil kol terakula as one particular entity. It's the energy of unity. It's the world of bina, which is able to be the womb from which everything else emerges. The shattering of the luchos is mamish. There's no fragmentation greater than that. Right? That is what it is. Right? It breaks that unity apart. On account of Klal Yisrael, meaning it was a mirror image for Klal Yisrael to the Chetei Egel. Eila le'achei Yisrael. Eila, what's Eila? Eila is many. Eila le'achei Yisrael. That was the aspect of Klal Yisrael disconnecting themselves from the shirish of Achdos and going to serve Psilim, which is the aspect of the lower 7. Mamela Moshe Rabbeinu breaks the luchas, which were supposed to be cheiros ala luchas, now became shivrei luchas. This is the side, in a deeper way, of luchas v'shivrei luchas v'nacham ba'aron. What's the inyan of the Torah Kedosha? The Torah, like we've learned, and this is so deep. It's so deep. The energy of the Torah Kedosha is a unified synthesis between Chachma and Bina. Okay, we've mentioned that many times now. That's come up almost in every lesson, at least in the last couple of months, right? Chachma and Bina, synthesis. It's a pasuk. Ki hi chachmaschem ubinaschem le'enei ha'amim. It's a pasuk. What is our Torah? It represents chachmaschem ubinaschem, the Vav HaChibur, bringing together Chachma and Bina le'enei ha'amim, and that's what Klal Yisrael is supposed to project as an Or LaGoyim, Chachma and Bina. The luchas themselves represent the energy of Chachma, totally unified. Shivrei luchas is the energy of what is lamata from Bina, right? Meaning it's the underside of Bina, so to speak, as Bina becomes the aim habanim and fragments into many pieces. The Aron, which is Keser Elyon, has within it luchas v'shivrei luchas. In other words, what the Torah enables us to do is to exist as a self and to be able to bring that self into dialogue with the other kruv, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Keser Elyon contains within it luchas v'shivrei luchas. By our Sinai, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is bringing about that energy of Chachma to allow Klal Yisrael to reconnect their own experience of fragmentation into the world of Bina. But you know, part of the process is that sometimes a person sins. And in sinning, they viter deep in their own sense of self, which on the surface is a really bad thing and should be something that we stay away from, right? In as much as we're experiencing our sense of self in contact with the divine. But as we go through life, a person slips and falls. Tshuva means I'm taking that newfound sense of self and I'm bringing that back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's why tshuva is associated with Bina, because tshuva takes my fragmented sense of self and reconnects me back to the shirish. Memela, from the standpoint of the of the Chachma big picture, of course the luchas had to be broken. Of course Klal Yisrael had to serve the Egel. That was part and parcel of the process, where they disconnected from that world of Chachma, and then they rebelled, and they experienced their own sense of self, and you and I, for all of human history, are trying to do tshuva for that chait of the rabbin. Lo hayris tshuva la rabbin. That's, Chazal say, why Klal Yisrael did the Chet Egel, were compelled to do the Chet Egel, Lahiris, Tshuva, L'Rabbim, because I wouldn't have known that a Rabbim could do Tshuva if only all I ever had as a model for a person who makes a mistake is David HaMelech, which is Lahiris, Tshuva, L'Yachid. So Memela, yeah, the Aron has to contain the Luchas, but it also has to contain the Shivrei Luchas. And that's the energy of Bina. So, when Moshe Rabbeinu breaks the luchas, which is the aspect of scattering down into the din, Memela, what comes into the world? Shikha comes into the world. Because shikha means all of a sudden I'm disconnected with my holistic experience. In my sustained experience of unity, I should remember everything that I ever went through because it's literally all a part of me. Why do I forget things? It means it wasn't so deep. It wasn't mamish mikushar, something that a person's connected with, they remember. All right, that was like super clear to me in the beginning of my journey. Pnimius Chasidus was my chelik of Torah. Obviously, I try to learn as much as I can of everything, keeping the balance. But the way that I knew that is just because I remembered everything I learned. Like it was like, and in halacha, I still I've learned Kitzur Shulchan Aruch 5 times, right? Mamish, the whole sefer 5 times. I used to have Kitzur daily. I just couldn't remember. I can't remember anything. That's why, don't come to me for halacha. I'll have to look it up, just like you. I have to constantly be learning it. I pasha can't remember. It's just not my chelik. Now, of course, it's my chelik. It's everybody's chelik, and we have to keep halacha v'chuliv, right? But over here, I remembered every single thing I learned. It was a pellet. If we were unified, we would remember everything that we learned, because everything would be so meaningful to us, so connected to our experience. But they're not. Some things are more, some things are less. That's din. That's din. Fragmentation. This yeah, this not. That's an experience of din. That's the shivrei luchas. Right? So the Rebbe says, so the pasuk referring to the hamtaka of the 3 times Elokim with the 3 times Yud Kei Vav. Okay, well that's going to be gematria the Rashi Tevis of V'say Rascha Lo Shachachti Shalit. Right? Shin Lamed Vav. 336. But the word itself, shachachti, is also part of the hamtaka. Gam ikra shikha back inside him moich in the katnes. The primary shikha comes as a result of moich in the katnes mebechinas Elokim from the aspect of din. Ukshemamtikas Elokim bekapav. When a person brings out the misam pela adam, brings everything back to geula energy, brings it back to Yetzias Mitzrayim, and they sweeten the Elokim with 3 times Havaya. Al yedei zev rascha lo shachachti. Not only is it true in the Rashi Tevis gematria, the words themselves represent this tikkun, because now you rectify the shivrei luchas and you brought them back into proximity with the luchas and the aron. V'zeh perish, this is pshat in the pasuk, ki vi chashak va'afalteu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has desired me, va'afalteu, and he's going to help me escape. Ki bi is gematria 42. Mem Hei is ki vi. Right, these 2 words, ki vi, is gematria 42. Hainu shalish pa'amim yad. And that's the gematria of 3 times Yudalid, is 42. Kivi chashak. You want to awaken the cheshik of the leiv, bina, that place of the heart, and work the enthusiasm up in the bechina of kalat smoisai taimarna Hashem mikamoicha, that the whole body should get involved, not just to stand stoically, but to move, to shake, to mamish tnuach chitzonus ma'ara pnimis. People are supposed to daven with fire, mamish fire. It says by Rabbi Akiva, you would start on one side of the shul, and at the end of Shemona Esrei, you'd find him on the other side of the shul. He was like the original chassid, The Berditcher was rolling under the tables like during davening. We don't daven today. We don't. We need to mamish daven like they used to daven. We need to stop thinking what the person next to me cares or thinks about, or not. I'm not worried about anything. I'm on this planet to serve the Bari Olam. That's it. I don't care what other people think. We have to get out of this klipa, mamish, and be yidden, free, totally free, mamish. Like redeemed, lit, activated. I don't know what other words to use. It's so hard over here because the culture is so contained and timid. In Eretz Yisrael, they mamish know how to daven. Like one of the things I'm most looking forward to, I don't want to say anything bad. I'm just so excited to daven, again, like with the Yidden who daven, again, all of us daven, but you know what I mean? Minyanim, like it used to be, the Rebbe said, Rabbi Nachman, I should have mentioned it. He said, when I see people davening very contained, he says, this is not what I want for my Hasidim. He says, my Hasidim are going to get into Gan Eden by the sweat on their sleeves, the Rebbe said, from their davening. It's the sweat. You have to, like somebody, a friend, Rabbi Yamin Weiner once told me, he said, you can tell who's a real fan of like a particular sport if when they leave the game they're all sweaty. Like if a person just went because some date brought them, and she's sitting there like sipping her beer, and she doesn't know the difference, between a goal and a hoop and a basket. She doesn't know what sport she's watching, but she's not But a person who's mamish, like their paint, is like dripping because they got into it. Like you'd think they were the ones who played. That's a fan. We have to be fans of tefillah. You understand? Okay. But a person should mamish you should tell that a person just davened, and just have like a business meeting, like come at a tefillah ready to go, with flam fire, with really, real fire. That's what the Rebbe wanted, right? Cheshek, kivi is cheshek. What's kivi? 42. What's 42? 3 times yad. Clapping. Then we will escape. That's the aspect of hamtakas adin. Weiter. It is also true that clapping is going to help to be mevat machlekes. Why? All the machlekes is nimshach from kairach and aaron shebechinas small of yamina, like we learned at the end of Torah Mem Dalid, that kairach and aaron are respectively rooted, or the middle, rather, of Torah Mem Dalid, are rooted in the right and the left. When we clap, simple as it is, we bring the right and the left together, left and the right together. We have to believe that just by clapping, we're bringing about a tikkun in the world, and we are bringing about achdus in Klal Yisrael and achdus among all the nations of the world. V'zeh perish, heiru barak of tevel, ra savatach la'aretz. Heiru barak of tevel. Hashem's thunder and lightning is illuminating the earth. The whole earth is trembling and shuddering. Tevel is a bechinas machas kapayim. The word tevel is the aspect of clapping hands. Ki yamin, because the right hand, from the standpoint of it representing chesed, is gematria ayin beis 72. Usmal zeresh yudvav, and the left hand is 2:16. When you clap, this, like we said, brings about the doubling over of Reish Yud Vav, and that's Gematria Tevel, as we're going to see in a minute. That's Gematria Tevel. Tevel is 432, and that's going to be double Gvura. Why? Because, and this is a huge side, that we're running out of time, and I do want to get to the end, so we're not going to spend too much time on this, but the right hand, in a certain Bechina, is also Reish Yud Vav. Why? Because the right hand is three times ayin beis is gematria reish yud vav. Why do we have 3 times ayin beis? Zabechinas kain gadol, kain hadit, uskana kain. This is in the Kisvei Arizal. Even the tzad yamin has 3 kavim, right? It's in the yamin, but it itself has 3 kavim, right? It itself has the bechina of kad yamin, kav yamin, kav small, and kav emtza. Kav yamin is the bechina of kain gadol. And Kayin Hadid is kav small, Uskana Kayin is kav ha'emtsai, and that's all within Kayin. Kayin is chesed, right? So you have 3 times chesed, that's 3 times ayin beis, and that's gematria gvura. Okay, a lot to speak about there, but we're going to leave that for now. That's Tevel, V'al Yedeshin Isra Tevel, Hainu Mechas Kapayim. When this aspect of Tevel is activated on account of this 2 times Reish Yud Vav, because the 2 hands are activated, Ayideza Heiru Barakav, Nestakana Machloikas Anikra Barak. Through this, Heiru Barakav. Barak is going to be illuminated. What's Barak? Machloikas, Kamashikasav, Yatzak Barak Chitzai. His arrows came forth like Barak, like lightning. The chetz, what is chetz? Is an arrow, and that would be antagonistic enough, right? But it also is a reference to machlekes, and he was hated by Balei Chitzim. This is in Yosef's bracha, referring to the Shvatim and the way that they hounded Yosef at Tzaddik. Balei Chitzim. The Targum Balei Plukta, and the Aramaic translation, the Targum Onkelos, is Balei Plukta. So that's Chetz. Chetz is Barak. Barak is He'ira Barakav. We want to illuminate the Barak, which is Machlik. So how do you do that? Tevel. What's Tevel? Is the two hands coming together. Zeh peirush Kol ha'amim tiku chaf. Lashon is chabros Kol ha'amim. We want to bring all the nations together. How are we going to do that? Tiku chaf. Right? We're going. All the nations of the world are going to hold hands. Are going to bring their hands together. Lashon is chabros. A lashon of bringing everything together. Kishnei pa'amayim beis reish yud vav is gematria tiku, because bringing together ayin beis and reish yud vav, which is the pure aspect of chesed, gematria ayin beis, and reish yud vav, gematria gvura. Just by bringing those together, you get the word tiku. So kol ha'amim tiku. If you want kol ha'amim tiku. The way to do that is by activating chesed and gvura. How do you do that? Kaf. By clapping hands together. Mavur and the psukim. Unbelievable. Okay, Lias, and now here we come to the end, last few minutes. Lias says, Reb Nosson, because kodim sheitakti Torah zois miksivasi yada kedosha kasavti mitchilik sasmi inin zeba atzmi, prior to Rabbi Nachman's having written down his own notes on this Torah, says Reb Nosson, I was there that Shabbos, and right away he felt the Osiris to go and write down what he had heard, right? So he already had this Tchunas HaNefesh. Some people even say that when Reb Nosson was by the Berditch of a Rav, he did the same thing. Some people go so far as to say that some of Reb Nosson's writings are actually in Kedushas Levi, and I found a particular location, it could be I mentioned this in the past, in Kedushas Levi, which is almost word for word, or the very, very close formulation to the way that Reb Nosson writes Torah Samach Gimel. So I think I have some textual proof to this, that it's possible Reb Nosson himself was involved in the writing of Kedushas Levi. That's a fascinating aside. Be that as it may, it says here that Reb Nosson says what I'm writing in Likutei Moharan is from Rabbi Nachman's writing, but I myself first wrote these things down. So I'm going to write and include my own writing, and Shneim Ke'echad Tovim. And those are really three very important words from the standpoint of understanding the relationship between Rabbi Nachman and Reb Nosson, which are themselves the Bechina of Chachma and Bina. They're not getting into the whole depth of that, but Shneim Ke'echad Tovim, which is everything we've been speaking about. Okay, so he says, V'zeu, Inyan Achas Kaf al Kaf Be'esat Tefillah. This is the words of Reb Nosson, which is, again, it's a lebechdi that he chooses this Torah to include his own writing, right, in the Lashon Rabbeinu Zechus Bracha, because it's the bringing together of all aspects. Kasav b'Priyetz Chaim, it's brought down to the Priyetz Chaim, Shalev Hayisi v'Yifar Pereni. The pasuk says in Eiv, which Rabbi Nachman doesn't include in Lashon Rabbeinu, Shalev Hayisi, I was calm, v'Yifar Pereni, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu made my life extremely challenging. Says the Arizal, Shalev is begematria Gimel Avayis Gimel Elokim. Right, Shalev is that word, Shin Lamed Vav, what Rabbi Nachman used as a Rosh Tevis for the three words V'saras Chalei Shechachti, not even including this remez from the Ari, is written in the Arizal based on a literal pasuk in Eiv that has the word Shalev as a word. What does Shalev mean? Calm. Rosh Tevis shell and the Arizal write that Shalev is gematria, a different pasuk, the Yasem Lecha Shalem. Which, again, the Rebbe didn't even include this. The Rebbe wants you to discover on your own. The Rebbe is just bringing his own Giluyim. But the Ari already says, V'yasim l'cha shalim is gematria shaliv. Dainu gimel pa'amim avaya, mamtik gimel elikim. And the Arizal says, the three times Yud Kevav, Kar mamtik, the three times elikim. And the Arizal says, and then Rabbi Nachman says, Keish gimel yadayim, because there are three yadayim, yada Gedalyah, yada chazaka, yada ramah. V'hein yad yamin, hu yada Gedalyah, yada smol, yada chazaka. Right, the right hand is yada Gedalyah, the left hand is Yad Harama, by bringing the hands together, that produces Yad Harama. V'alkein, therefore, says Reb Nosson, K'shemaka kafal kafal mechaber yadayim b'tefillah, when a person claps and they are bringing their hands together during tefillah, nimtakam adinim, this brings about the sweetening of the din, ki yad b'chinas havaya, yud oisios v'dalid oisios. Interesting enough, Rabbi Nachman says, well, yeah, yud kevavke is itself the aspect of yad. Why? Because yad is 4 letters, dalid, and 10 letters, and that's yud kevavke. Because Yud Kevavke in and of itself is 4 letters, but if you expand all of the letters, Yud Vav Dalet Hey Yod V'chulei, you have 10 letters. So Yud Kevavke is already Yad. 4 and 10. When you bring together the yadayim of Havaya and you sweeten the gorain, which is gematria 3 times Elokim, shu gimel havayis nim takama gimel Elokim, and that sweetens the gimel Elokim, shem adinam hayotzim gorain, which is the aspect of the throat, shem gematria gimel Elokim. Those things are sweetened. Skula lizikaran, and Reb Nosson brings over here, it is a skula for memory. Kamashakasav nafshi. B'chapi tamid, again, is just bringing what the Rebbe had said. Nafshi b'chapi tamid. What does this pasuk mean? Nafshi and b'chinas tvila gamashakasav nafshi yotze b'dabrei. So nefesh is associated with dibor because the pasuk says nafshi yotze b'dabrei. B'chapi tamid hainu kishemaka kafal kabish asa tvila. When I b'chapi tamid, when I'm constantly clapping, al yedei zeh v'saras chalai shachachti. That's going to be able to sweeten Shikha, Shikha comes, like we explained at length, on account of the Shivrei Luchas, which is Elikim. When the dinim are nimtak, are sweetened, are nimtakim, this is going to sweeten the mind and expand our brain to be able to reconnect to the essence and sweeten all the shikha v'alkein, and therefore these 3 words which discuss the tikkun of shikha, which is Elokim, through the aspect of Yud Vav Havaya, is going to be Rashi Tevis Shalev Dahainu Al Yidei Shemamtik Gimel Elokim Gimel Havayas Kanal. This will rectify the aspect of forgetfulness. There's a daika b'shas tefillah, and it's got to be at the time of tefillah that this tikkun takes place. Why? Reb Nosson finishes, ki az yodea imu b'moichin dekatnes oy degadlus. Then a person will be able to understand, am I a moichin dekatnes, am I a moichin degadlus? Because tefillah is galus hamoichin, because it's in tefillah that the moichin are revealed. Piv dasu tfuna. A person's able to get a sense for where their mind is by virtue of how they daven. And so tefillah is the place where the moichin of all the Torah that we learned, going back to Torah Aleph, Torah Niskabim called Tfilas V'chol B'kashan B'vakshim U'Mispal V'chulei. That was Torah Aleph. It's through the Torah. Why? Because Tefillah is going to externalize our moichin. Why? Because tefillah is dibor. Dibor, going back to Torah Mem Gimel, is going to be how zivug, which is the zivug of Chacham and Bina, is going to be able to become expressed. If I feel that my dibor is in a place of moichin the katnos, says the Rebbe, we have to make a tikkun. The moichin the katnos is rooted in the gara, which is 3 times Elokim. The tikkun for the 3 times Elokim is 3 times Havaya. How am I going to do that? By clapping nafshi dibor b'chapi tamid. That brings about 336. Shalev hayisiv vatefar pereni, the bechina of shalev, and fundamentally the bechina of the yasem lecha shalem, to be able to bring peace in our own world, peace among our shivrei luchas and the luchas that are munachim ba'arin, and peace among all the nations of the world, so that we can all greet Mashiach tzidkenu b'meher b'yameinu. Amen va'amen.
I feel like
ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי, האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני